America eats the most GMOs in the world, and we're the sickest of all of the developed nations.
Welcome to the Wise Traditions Podcast, sponsored by the Weston A. Price Foundation for Wise Traditions in Food, Farming, and the Healing Arts. We are your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health.
I'm your host, Hilda Labrada Gore. This is episode 145, and my guest is Zen Honeycutt. Zen is the author of the new book, Unstoppable, and she is the founding executive director of Moms Across America, a group with a mission to raise awareness about GMOs and toxic exposure. Today, she explains in crystal clear terms how and why genetically modified organisms mess with our health. She discusses how GMO consumption correlates with rates of cancer, autism, allergies, infertility, autoimmune disorders, and more. She gives us the science behind the anti-GMO movement, and she invites us to become activists ourselves, advocating for our right to healthy food. Before we get into the conversation, we want to take a moment and recognize our sponsors. The Wise Traditions Podcast is first and foremost supported by the Weston A. Price Foundation. And the Weston A. Price Foundation is supported by you. We can only do what we do, research, education, and activism, with your help. So please give a gift of any size during this, our fundraiser drive. Go to westonaprice.org/donate. And thank you. And Walkabout Health Products. Check out Walkabout Australian Emu Oil. Emu oil is the food source with the highest naturally occurring vitamin K2 MK4. Find out more about its benefits on their website, walkabouthealthproducts.com. Welcome to Wise Traditions, Zen.
Thank you so much, Hilda, and thank you to all your listeners. It's so exciting to be on with you today.
We are so happy to have you back. And today we're going to have a special emphasis on unstoppable activism. I want to kick off with the story of the woman in Kentucky. Can you tell us that story?
Sure, absolutely. Well, after our first parades back in 2013, meaning Moms Across America supporters joined in to 4th of July parades to reach thousands locally and millions nationally with a banner that read, Moms Across America March to Label GMOs. This was back during the GMO initiative. Well, we had 179 groups join in to 4th of July parades to reach people in a family-friendly, fun way. And it was so exciting. But the day after the parade, I started hearing through social media and on the internet that there was a woman in Kentucky named Samantha who was very upset with her experience about being in a parade. So I reached out to her and I said, what happened? And she said, well, I had about 12 people that were going to march in the parade with me and to raise awareness about GMOs. And it kind of rained that day. It was a light rain, a sprinkle. So they held the parade anyway, but the people that had said they were going to join into the parade didn't go because they figured the parade would be canceled. So she was the only one who showed up with her 18-month-old baby in a stroller and a sign that said either label GMOs or Google GMOs, a very simple sign. She had the baby hold the sign and she held an umbrella and she pushed the stroller with one hand. And she walked in that parade by herself. And she got heckled. People on the side of the parade, the parade goers sitting on the edge of the street said, what do you know? And haven't you heard of science? And what are you against science? Or they heckled her. Not everybody, but many people did. And she was very upset. And she said it was terrible.
Oh.
Yeah. And I said, but hang on a second, Samantha. I mean, at first I got that it was terrible for her. I really get that. Wow, that is shocking,
Yeah.
But considering the climate, we do know that there are a lot of people who are for GMOs and want to heckle those that are, against them. And so I said to her, wait a second, you're getting heckled. It was raining. You're by yourself. What had you keep going? Why didn't you just leave the parade? And why did you even start to begin with? And she said, well, when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And I was like, that's awesome. That is unstoppable. That's what's going to have us win. I said, think about it. How many people did you reach in that parade with that one sign and your baby? And she said, I don't know, maybe a couple thousand. I'm like, you did that by yourself. That was amazing. How many people do you think are going to go home now and Google GMOs and find out what they are?
Mhm.
And she said, oh, yeah, probably a lot. And she said, but, the climate here is still, I said, I know, but you planted a seed. They may not change their point of view right now, but you planted a seed. You had them wonder, why is this woman marching by herself with a sign that says GMOs on it? What are GMOs?
Mhm.
So, I just want to take my hat off to Samantha and to the many, many supporters that we have out there, and not just our groups, but many groups, OCA and Beyond Pesticides and Friends of the Earth. There's many organizations that are supporting, people who want their neighbors and friends to know about GMOs, about glyphosate, which is the active chemical ingredient in Roundup, and they're doing something about it despite all odds, despite controversy, despite criticism, and they're standing tall and they're speaking out, and it's what makes America great, frankly. It's not our president or which political party is in power. It's the individual person standing up and speaking up for the better of not just themselves, but for their neighbors and friends. That's what makes me inspired to be an American. And that's why I'm excited again about being in the 4th of July parades and reaching people. We have new flyers, we have new banners, and I can't wait to hear about new people who are joining in the parade for whatever cause they want to stand up for, whether it be fracking or health freedom or, air or water pollution or GMOs. These are our towns. These are our communities, our people. This is our country. It's time for us to take it back by empowering each other. And so I'm excited to be on today to be able to share this story with you about there's so many moms like Samantha who are speaking up.
Well, it's really inspiring to hear it. I'm only lamenting that this is going to come out shortly after July, this episode. But guess what? We are unstoppable. So your activism and our activism doesn't stop with the end of the July 4th celebrations, does it?
No, and there's many. Think about it. The July 4th is just the beginning of the summer. There's summer festivals that are happening all summer long. There's Memorial Day parades next year. There's Labor Day parades happening in the fall. There's Christmas and New Year's parades. There's sporting events happening all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever there's a lot of people that are in your neighborhood all coming together, and it's a family-friendly, fun event. It's not a protest where people are screaming and yelling and, all of that. People tend to receive our flyers and our information more willingly in a setting that is more just family-friendly and fun. And so I encourage you to think about throughout the summer, what festivals might there be, or fairs, or other parades or gatherings where you can pass out our flyers. The flyers this year are all about the current health crisis. Every single person you pass a flyer to will have a family member that's sick, unfortunately. That's the way it is in America today. And our flyers address the toxic burden, that they can get better by reducing that toxic burden. And that toxic burden is coming at us mostly through food and water, also through vaccines and medication, also through our household products, cleaning products and things that are in our home, and also through the environment. So this flyer for the first time addresses all of those issues and supports people with a professional looking, not scary looking flyer, and invites them to find out more information on our website. And you can add in a flyer that says, we're going to have a movie night in 2 weeks from now or a month from now, and we invite you to come, or an organic potluck, or, a pool party at a community center, just to get together and talk about the health of our children and our families and what we can do about it. And so we really invite you to take advantage of these free flyers that we have. And you can do that by going to momsacrossamerica.org under events and post your own event. So if you're going to have a play date or a speaker series or a movie night, there's some great movies out there you can show. Then you post the date and the time and the, maybe even an image or whatever you'd like of that event, and have yourself be the point person. And when you post that event, we know you're serious, and you'll get a code for a free box of materials of 1,000 flyers worth over $169. And all you have to do is pay for shipping, which is about $20.
Oh, that's fantastic.
We have tens of thousands of flyers that we want to get out to you to support you in creating healthy communities.
So what we're going to do, Zen, is we're going to put a link in our show notes to your website, to the spot where they can contact you if they want to have an event and get all those materials available to them. I want to back up for just a moment because I think some of our listeners may still be in the getting familiar with GMOs and glyphosate and their dangers. So, the Weston Price Foundation, we're all about research, education, and activism. And I kind of like that they're in that order because we're not saying just be, activated by some, scary, like you said, some scary flyer. Your flyers aren't scary. But, by some sensationalism or some random phrase someone saw on the internet. We're saying let's dig deep, find out what's going on. Let's educate ourselves, and then let's do something about it. So can you back up and just tell us a little bit about your own understanding that's scientifically based about the dangers of GMOs and glyphosate in particular?
Absolutely. I know for some people, GMOs it's still a new word, and we don't blame you because it's not in the media. I fed my child GMOs for 9 years. I didn't know. And it wasn't until all my children had, allergies, some of them life-threatening, some of them autism symptoms, asthma, autoimmune issues, that I began to research. And what I found out is that GMOs are genetically modified organisms. They were started by chemical companies that wanted to sell more chemicals about 20 years ago. When they couldn't use chemicals anymore in World War II, they needed a new market. So they declared war on bugs and weeds. And they said, let's create plant seeds, soy and corn and things like that will resist chemicals so we can spray the crops and get rid of the weeds and the bugs, but the plants will still live. And we'll eat those crops, thinking that those chemicals would have no effect on health. That was a huge turning point for not only farmers, but for humanity, I believe, because these chemicals have now been shown to alter DNA, to damage cells, to cause endocrine disruption, which means to alter sex hormones, to cause miscarriages, birth defects, all kinds of infertility and sterility, to cause chelation, which means to hold or make unavailable the vital nutrients of any living thing they touch. Specifically, glyphosate does this. It does not wash off. It does not dry off. And glyphosate is the declared active chemical ingredient in the most widely used herbicides in the world now. Roundup, Rodeo, there's 750 different brand names because the chemical's gone generic. So these chemicals have many different, I can't even name them all right now. There's probably about 40 different health effects that have been linked to glyphosate herbicides. And we're seeing that decline in our country. And I saw it in my own children. I saw allergies, asthma, autoimmune issues, autism symptoms. And my husband and I never had those. Mm-hmm. And I'm, in the mom's club, and all of a sudden there's kids showing up that are allergic to apples or melons or, pepper or spinach. And I'm like, what is going on here? So I began to link the connection between GMOs, which also, by the way, GMOs are foreign proteins. So the body can resist them. When something's foreign in your body, you can say, wait a second, I don't want you here. And then inflammation occurs. And all kinds of problems can happen with inflammation. And there's a couple kinds of GMOs. There's the ones that has the pesticide built in. So when the bug eats it, its body explodes. There's the other type of GMO, which is engineered to withstand the herbicides, which I was just talking about, the Roundup Ready ones. Right. 80% of GMOs are engineered to withstand Roundup. And then there's a third type of GMO, which I refer to in my book called Unstoppable, which I call DT, or desired trait GMOs, to sort of group this whole sort of newish, it's not really that new, but newish category of GMOs where they don't engineer them to withstand herbicides or pesticides. They engineer them for a desired trait, like more vitamin A, or for a pink pineapple, or for apples that don't brown, things like that. Yeah. The problem with those, even though they're declaring that they're safer and newer and that's the future, is that preliminary studies have shown that one gene edit in a gene drive or a gene edit has resulted in over 1,600 off-target mutations, meaning things happened that they didn't intend to have happen. Now, I've got homework and doctor's visits and, getting kids to their friend's house. I got a lot of other things to worry about. You think I want to have to worry about mutations happening in my child from feeding them a certain food?
Yeah, no.
No. So I'm not interested in this GMO 2.0 or new GMOs and them declaring that they're safer, because they're not.
So I understand that recently on NPR, someone was saying that GMOs are indeed safe. And I did a little research on this, and it said on this episode, the National Academy of Sciences recently reaffirmed their judgment that GMOs are safe to eat. How is this possible when what you're saying is quite the opposite?
Well, how that's possible is that they are shown studies that are created by the industry and that are from scientists that are usually paid through a university which has been heavily funded by Monsanto, Dow, DuPont, Syngenta, BASF, or Bayer. Now, they will, of course, deny this, but I've come in contact face to face with a veterinarian and professor that worked, for instance, say at UC Davis. UC Davis is heavily funded by Monsanto. They created the weed-free straw program, which promotes buying straw for your horses and animals to feed them on and for them to bed on that are weed-free. Now, of course, they're going to be using Roundup and glyphosate to get those weeds out of the crop, right, before harvest. So that product comes from Monsanto, and Monsanto heavily funds the university. So any professor that's going to be speaking on that topic will usually feel compelled to speak on behalf of Monsanto. And this particular professor that I met, or veterinarian, did very heavily and was very insulting and condescending to me, calling me emotional and, all kinds of things. So they are going to stick to their guns because they've seen scientific studies funded by the industry and they feel validated. They feel like they're right to say that I've seen studies to show that these are safe. Well, many of those studies have also been heavily criticized, that they were done very short term, maybe just a short toxicology study, 96 hours. I don't know about you, but I don't eat food for only 96 hours. I'm planning on eating food for the rest of my life. So I don't think short-term toxicology studies are valid in reference to, a chemical that you're going to be consuming for your entire life. And there's many other things. There's dead rats that have been thrown out, and then they only count the live rats. There's been manipulation of data. Many independent scientists have taken a look at many of these studies and said, these are just not valid. These are junk science. What the professors are relying on. So I would ask them to look again at the independent science, not the science that has been funded by the chemical companies who stand to benefit from them.
Yeah, and that independent science really points to the problems that you've mentioned, that diseases such as cancer, autoimmune diseases, autism, and infertility seem to be rising in proportion with the amount of GMOs in the food supply.
Yes, and some actually show causation. There's a study that came out in January of this past year by Michael Antonou and Robin Massage, I think, and Sarah Leaney. Many scientists came together and showed that glyphosate herbicides, meaning Roundup or their formulations, cause liver disease at very low levels, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease in rats at levels below what is found in our food, the same milligrams per kilogram, right? The same correlate level. And 1 out of 10 Americans now have some form of liver disease. We're seeing fatty liver disease in children as young as 8 years old.
Wow.
So you can't tell me when something shows that it's caused non-alcoholic liver disease in rats that's not correlated to what's happening in our children. I mean, there are studies that show very strong evidence. I mean, the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma lawsuit that's happening right now with Dwayne Johnson testifying right now up in San Francisco in late June. That case is being heard because a study shows that there's a 50% increase of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma when the animals were exposed to glyphosate herbicides, so particularly Roundup. So there are now thousands of people who are suing Monsanto for the causation of their cancer due to exposure to Roundup and the other brands. So it's a very serious issue. I mean, Monsanto makes, I believe it's over $40 billion a year on Roundup. Bayer has just acquired them. We're hoping that Bayer will set Roundup aside and decide to no longer sell this poison to farmers and go in a new direction, because this one is obviously not working. Spraying poison on our food is not working anymore for anyone.
Coming up, Zen discusses some of the global consequences of consuming GMOs and where we might be headed if we don't take some action. We pause now for a quick thanks to our sponsors. The Weston A. Price Foundation, of course. Being member-supported means we need your help to keep doing all we're doing. If you believe in what we're bringing, help us pass health on to the next generation during this, our fundraising drive. Just go to westonaprice.org/donate to contribute a gift of any size. For donations of $100 or more, you'll get our Wise Traditions Starter Kit. For $250 or more, we'll send you a copy of Sally Fallon Morell's latest book, Nourishing Diets. And for donations of $2,500 or more, you can have dinner with Sally Fallon Morell and her husband Jeffrey, along with a personal tour of their farm. So just go to our website and click on the donate button. And thank you in advance for making a difference for future generations. And Walkabout Health Products, the exclusive distributors of Walkabout Australian Emu Oil, the world's best fat. Walkabout Emu Oil is a life-sustaining fat and an ancestral sacred food of the indigenous Australians. It is the highest naturally occurring food source of vitamin K2-MK4, which is what Dr. Price called Activator X. At least 10 times more than any other food source. This vitamin, in its bioactive form, works at the genetic and metabolic level, and it's profoundly anti-inflammatory and anti-angiogenic. It offers essential nutrition for a lifetime of health. Go to walkabouthealthproducts.com and get a 10% discount at checkout using the coupon code EMUWiseTraditions. So go to walkabouthealthproducts.com. From what I understand, some of those very vocal people who are in favor of GMOs sometimes won't have that food, that very food on their own plates because they know. Some of them know. I've heard the FDA, for example, has a GMO-free cafeteria, which makes no sense if they think it's all safe, right?
Well, no, I've been to Monsanto, and I spoke to the woman who was a self-declared Monsanto brat. Her dad worked there. She worked there for many years. And as we walked through the cafeteria on the way to the annual shareholder meeting, I asked her about the food, and she was so ready to give me an answer. She had started answering me even before I finished asking the question. She said, well, no, we eat GMO food. We only eat organic when no other alternative is available. For instance, if there's only organic spinach available, we'll eat the organic spinach. But we have GMO food, and when the GMO sweet corn is in season, we have that, and it's fabulous. So that's what an employee said. But what I think most of the GMO proponents are so strongly for GMOs is because they've been told that GMOs are going to save the world. They're feeding the third world, that we need them because in 2050 we're going to have tens of billions of people on the planet, and we're going to need GMOs to feed all these people. Well, the fact is America eats the most GMOs in the world, and we're the sickest of all of the developed nations. South Korea imports the most GMOs of any other country, and they have the highest levels of developmental delays in their children in the world. They have 2 to 3 times higher the levels of autism than we do. Japan is very high. Philippines, very high. They import over 90% of the soy that's imported into the Philippines is GMO. And they have 1 out of 33 children there. This was 2 years ago that I found out the stat. 1 out of 33 children have autism there.
Oh, no.
So we have to take a serious look at what we're doing to our population. In fact, Dr. Zach Bush, who is a triple board certified MD and declared by Dr. Mercola, whom most people know, as the most brilliant doctor on the planet, said to recently at the Autism One conference that 1 out of 3 people in China and India now are testing positive for pre-diabetes or diabetes. And that he links directly to glyphosate and the introduction in the past 10 years of high levels of glyphosate. Because what happens is when glyphosate goes in your body and in your stomach, glyphosate destroys the beneficial gut bacteria and allows for the proliferation of pathogenic gut bacteria, right? But in the beneficial gut bacteria is where tryptophan and serotonin and melatonin and other essential hormones are made and stored. Now, without serotonin, your body cannot regulate insulin. So what's going to happen? Diabetes. And this is why we're seeing people who normally you wouldn't think would be getting diabetes. They're not overweight. They're actually very thin, but they're showing up with prediabetes. Now, what Dr. Zach Bush says is that within 10 years, we are going to have a global economic collapse if things don't change. Because out of those billion people in China and the almost a billion people in India, with 1 out of 3 of them getting a very serious illness, with the healthcare costs of all of that and the decline in factory workers, right? So many of the people in India and China work in factories that help drive our economy, our global economy. With a reduction of those factory workers, we're going to see a major impact on the economy. So this is extremely important. I mean, I would also add we're going to see an impact on the military, on our education, on our housing, on our politicians and policymakers. This is a very serious issue to be addressing. And this is why moms say health comes first. Because without health, we have nothing else. Without healthy people, we don't have sane policymakers. We don't have politicians and policemen and teachers, right? And regulatory agencies that are making sane decisions.
No, how are we going to have strong leaders tomorrow if everybody's sick?
Exactly.
It's very troubling.
Either physically or mentally. And in America now, we have 1 out of 5 people with some form of mental illness, whether it be depression or anxiety or bipolar or, some form of mental illness. And that is completely unsustainable, and that can also be directly linked to the neurotoxins, the known neurotoxins, which are being sprayed on our food, like chlorpyrifos, which was on a list to be banned for, I believe it was about 5 years. It was all set to be banned, and this current administration took it off the ban list after a very convenient meeting and a donation from the chemical companies which make that chemical. Now, Hawaii got smart, and they banned chlorpyrifos because it is a known neurotoxin, especially to children. And I hope that many other states wake up and the state leaders and do the same thing. We have a long way to go in this, but if we, the consumers, continue to tell the food manufacturers that we don't want this chemically laden food by buying organic, they will have to get it, and they will need to shift towards sourcing food which is not sprayed with chemicals.
So we're kind of circling back around to activism, what we can do as individuals. Sounds like it starts right at our own dinner tables.
Absolutely. You buy organic food, you're sending that message every single time. I don't want your toxic chemicals. And that is the best and the strongest way to go. So we hope everybody buys organic and encourages their friends and family to buy organic, having things like an organic potluck where you say on the invite, please bring organic food. If you don't want to make an organic dish, bring organic juice or wine or, a beverage. It can be that simple. You can be an activist just by having friends over and having an organic potluck.
Now, Zen, I want to ask you a couple more questions as we prepare to wrap up. One is, how can we pull together as a community that's convinced that food can be our medicine? Instead of taking us away from our health, it can bring us really good health when it's nutrient dense and organic and all these things. How can we pull together when I feel like there's already some divisiveness sometimes within our own ancestral health community?
Well, please remember that every body is different, right? And every body needs different nutrients. And people from China ancestrally have consumed different foods from people than Germany or from Africa. And we're all different. So I would hope people would not get into morals when judging what other people are eating, but really focus on what works for your body and your health.
That's excellent. And we can focus on commonalities. We're all against foods that are really pseudo foods and that are harmful to our health. And we're all for the most organic, natural foods possible, wouldn't you say?
Yes, absolutely. Whole, local, seasonal foods, the least processed possible, and organic as much as possible. Kathleen D. Chiara, who wrote the book Hidden Connections, and a new book she has coming out called Resilient Health, mentioned that she doesn't believe that all children can completely recover by eating organic, but she doesn't think that any children can recover unless they are eating organic. Because if you're still introducing toxins into your body, whether it be a paleo diet, a vegan diet, a vegetarian diet, a standard American diet, if you're still introducing toxins into your child's body, their body is going to continue to have problems. So please start with an organic diet, no matter what kind of diet that you eat, and reduce those toxins in your child's body.
That is powerful, and that's a great first step. And I was gonna ask you this question, but I feel like you already answered it. If the listener could do one thing to improve their health or their children's health, what would you recommend that they do?
Well, yes, the number one thing to do is to eat organic. It's not enough for my family to eat organic because my children's future spouses are out there somewhere. They're teachers, they're caregivers, they're friends. So this is a community issue.
And I'm also going to add something here, Zen, to tell people to check out your book, Unstoppable, because you kind of wrap it all up in there for us about how to, I think the subtitle is even Transforming Sickness and Struggle into Triumph, Empowerment, and a Celebration of Community. So you take us from those three prongs I was talking about earlier, research, education, and activism. You kind of help us understand the whole big picture of what's going on with our health.
Absolutely. I love that that's the Wise Traditions philosophy because, yes, that's exactly what I cover in my book. I cover research, my personal stories, the outreach and education, the community. I bring in doctors, lawyers, scientists, and farmers, and they share about what's going on with the food supply. And then I share steps where you can take on leadership, whether it be in your own home or your town or school or in your country. And so it's a very empowering book. People have read it, have just loved it. And I'm so excited. And I hope that you can get a copy for yourself and maybe even one for your library as well.
If this conversation is any hint or indication of what that book holds, then I'm sure people are going to run out and get it. We will put a link in our show notes to it. They can find that link in the show notes, and we'll make sure to let them know they can also find it on Amazon and on your website. And we thank you so much for your unstoppable passion and activism on behalf of the children and the health of all. We are so thankful.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure to speak with you, Hilda.
It's been great. Thanks, Zen. My guest today was Zen Honeycutt. To connect with Zen, visit her website, momsacrossamerica.com. For the show notes and highlights from today's episode, just go to our website, westinaprice.org, and look for the show notes for episode 145. While you're clicking around, go ahead and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe to the show. And you might as well rate and review us while you're there. We'd appreciate it. Next week, my guest is Miriam Kalamian. She is the author of Keto for Cancer. You've probably heard of the keto diet with its emphasis on eating a good percentage of fat. People are into it because it seems to help with weight loss and burning fat. Miriam explains the origins of keto, how it works on a cellular level, and more. But she also comes at it from a different angle. She explains how it can be a healing therapy or support for those with cancer. She tells the whole story on this upcoming episode, including how her son's cancer diagnosis led her into all of this. It's a powerful conversation you will not want to miss. I'll wrap it up now with a big thank you to our team of podcast interns. Post-production assistants include Deirdre Beard, Diva Rizvi, Melanie Ahern, and Ari O'Hara. Cheryl Huftelin helps with social media. Mary Hine and Olga de Villiers, Joy de los Santos, and Cynthia Castro Cohen Enriquez boost sponsorship and help with special projects. And our listening team includes Heather Carpentier and Victor Coseto. Amy Matias helps with transcriptions. I appreciate each and every one of you so much. And last but not least, everybody, stay connected with me. I'm on Twitter at Holistic Hilda. I'm also on Instagram at Holistic_Hilda. I'm happy to field your ideas for future shows or meet with you at some health and wellness event. Speaking of that, don't forget that we have a wonderful conference coming up, the Wise Traditions Conference in Baltimore this November. Get on the wisetraditions.org site and check it out. Book your flight and hotel room now. This is no ordinary event. It is truly powerful and transformative on many levels. Finally, don't forget you can visit my website, holistichilda.com, to sign up for my periodic newsletter. I promise I won't inundate your inbox. And if you're a wellness professional that wants to start a show of your own, I can help with that. That's what I do. Hit me up for a free podcasting consult so we can figure out how to get you started. Thanks, everybody, and see you soon.
Have you been enjoying these podcasts? Have you benefited from them or from the resources on the website or local chapter meetings? If so, please become a member of the Weston A. Price Foundation. It's only $25 for students and seniors and $40 for a general membership. Your contribution is critical for the continued work of the foundation. Wise Traditions is brought to you by the Weston A. Price Foundation for Wise Traditions in Food, Farming, and the Healing Arts. The content of this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for medical advice.